The jobs report, anything but music President Obama's ears, a little less rosy picture than many economists had expected. How will he spin this one on the campaign trail? We'll also talk about the it factor, who's got it, who doesn't, and does it really matter when it's all said and done when issue 1, 2, and 3 are jobs in this election cycle? The quality of likability, charisma, whatever you want to call it, should it and will it really make a difference between now and November and later? Mandatory service, should service to country, military or otherwise, universal service, national service, should some kind of commitment by every American, rich or poor, be mandatory? Would that sense of duty make us better and more cohesive as a nation? And then caught on camera, it seems every day there's another story, another headline about people surreptitiously recording other people here. Sometimes catches them in the act, sometimes here it raises questions about privacy. Is it time that we just resign ourselves to the fact that we're always going to basically be on camera? We're going to get into all those issues and a lot more on this edition of RFL, but let's begin with Real Politics and our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. He's in first position with the latest.
And Rich, will begin tonight with a check of the latest numbers. We're now 123 days away from the election, and President Obama up by just over 2.5 points. But that may soon change because of the other big number of this day. That, of course, the jobs numbers. As President Obama's bus tour rolled through Ohio and Pennsylvania, his campaign was hit with an underwhelming jobs report. In June, employers added 80,000 new jobs. That is fewer than economists expected. That kept the unemployment rate at 8.2% and pushed the stock market down today. The president calling the job numbers, quote, a step in the right direction. Mitt Romney, though, called them another kick in the gut.
The president's policies have not gotten America working again, and the president's going to have to stand up and take responsibility for it.
Within hours of the unemployment numbers, the RNC released this political ad calling Obama out of touch and out of time. But on the campaign stump, the president pointed his finger right back at Mitt Romney.
Look, his company that he started were called the pioneers of business outsourcing.
So the question tonight is, how big of a problem will the latest unemployment numbers be for President Obama? And when it comes to jobs and the economy, Rich, who's got the better message?
All right, Andrew, thank you. Now let's bring our panel on this. Dominic Carter, of course, political journalist and author, and Basil Smikle, a political strategist, former top aide to Hillary Clinton and professor at Columbia University. And Basil, I'm going to start with you in that I didn't think the response from Obama really did him any favors. In this, I certainly think the attacks on Bain have been working, and that's a separate narrative. When the jobs report come out, if he was going to say anybody expecting miracles here in this economy is illusioning themselves, but to turn it into the Bain years for Romney as an address to numbers that weren't to be expected, I don't think that's what the public wants to hear, especially the undecided voters.
Yeah, they don't really want to hear that. Look, the big number here is 7.4%. 7.4% is the unemployment level that seems to be the maximum that can be achieved for a president to get reelected. No president has been elected with an unemployment rate over 7.4% since World War II. The problem is that I don't think that's going to happen in this election cycle. We're about 8.2, 8.4. We're at 8.2, 8.4. I don't think it's going to get down to anywhere near 7.4 before this election. So rather than be, I think the best strategy for the president is rather than be retrospective, he needs to be prospective. He needs to start articulating a vision for the future, a vision for the economy that is more forward-thinking and less about his record and less about Romney at Bain. I think you're right. Voters don't really want to hear that. What they really want to hear, especially these independents, they want to know, okay, what are you going to do for me if I'm losing my job or have already lost my job? My friend has lost their job. We're not really able to go buy a home. You know, the kids of this generation are not doing as well as their parents, and we need somebody to turn that around. That's what's going to bring independent voters in.
Well, as for what the message was today, you don't win elections by playing defense, you win by playing offense. You saw President Obama trying to play offense today. Whether it hit the right note is an open question, but he certainly wasn't going to go around and try to defend the unemployment rate or the lack of job creation.
Forget about defending it, Dominic. My point is, I think Basil hit it. Either you do one of two things today. You can do Bain, or you can outsource that message, pardon the pun here, to surrogates to do it for you. But if you're the president, you say, listen, just like you said, this is what I'm going to do. You give me 4 more years. This is where I'm going to put America back to work. GOP might not like it. I'm going to do infrastructure, or whatever he's going to say. and say, and by the way, if you don't like what I am, get the answer. You try getting the answer out of Mitt Romney. How's he really going to create jobs other than giving tax cuts to the 1%? I don't hear that from him. And this Bain answer to me is kind of weak.
Are you the president's press secretary?
Yeah, if I was, I'd fire right now.
No, that's a good argument. I can't counter what you just said. The president finds himself between a rock and a hard place. Let's be fair on this.
I know that, but by saying, hey, forget the years when he was at the Olympics. Forget the years when he was in Massachusetts as the governor. Forget about the years since even then here. Let's go back to his days at Bain here, since we're talking about the unemployment rate, and look what he did. To me, that doesn't work, but let's move on. Now, the next issue is a question I got for you, Dominic. It has to do with the 13th Congressional District in New York. Andrew, I thought this thing was resolved a week or so ago, not so fast, and each day it seems to get a little bit more muddled.
One of these days, Election Day will end on Election Day, Rich. Representative Charlie Rangel's lead on his Democratic primary challenger widening again today. New York City Board of Elections spent a second day counting absentee and affidavit ballots. By midday, Rangel was beating his challenger, State Senator Adriano by more than 1,100 votes. He was up only 802 votes before the count started on Thursday. Board should be all done by the end of today or perhaps sometime tomorrow. Could be a full recount. The final difference is less than 0.5%. Rangel trying to come back for a 22nd term, Rich.
Now, Dom, Espaillet's attorney here is saying, wait a second. There's been so many stuff, districts not counted whatsoever, people reporting that they were turned away at the polls here. Really interesting in terms of how the counting even took place. What do you think happens here? Is there a lawsuit, even if it's outside of that 0.5% margin?
I think the attorney is earning his salary, and that's about it. This race is over, whether we like it or not. Well, first of all, when we knew there was only 2,000 ballots left to be counted, Mr. Espaillet, the state senator, would have had to have won almost 1,400 of those 2,000 votes. It was almost impossible mathematically to begin with.
I'm with you, but Basil, to me, the question wasn't so much would he keep the margin, but all of a sudden, when you dig into it, a couple of days later, they didn't even count certain precincts altogether. It just didn't smell right.
Well, the big concern is that it's not even the affidavit ballots or the tallying of those ballots, because by law they have to actually have this waiting period. But the fact that 79 out of, I think, 576 election districts in the 13th Congressional District were recorded as 0. So that's sort of the basis of.
And some of them had 0 votes for Espaillet, which is all but a statistical impossibility.
Right. So that's where the argument that their campaign has put forth on this voter suppression has come into play. And look, this is happening in my district. I live in this district,
yes.
And I can tell you that there is a lot of spirited debate on both sides. Everybody's really upset, and all this has done really is, I think, embolden a lot of the Espaillet voters and supporters, and I do believe that Rangel's going to pull this out. But one wonders if this is not a Pyrrhic victory for him.
And if this is his swan song, it's going to be a pretty sour one.
Swan song.
Okay. Now, Andrew, this is for you, and we were talking about this morning. Is this election, with all the billions that will be spent when it's all said and done from the special interest groups and the campaigns, a boring one? And you're the one who posed the question, so answer your own question.
Well, this all came from a Pew Research poll that went through and found that more voters think that it is boring. 67% said the campaign will be exhausting. 56% say it's too long and too dull. 53% too negative. 79% say the campaign is important, even though it's a little bit boring. By the way, the only election of the last 5 that wasn't ranked boring was 2008, which was sort of a bit of a sea change election. Yes, I think a lot of people, the old standby is voters don't pay attention until the World Series or until Labor Day. I think there is an element of that. People have heard so much from both sides, especially over the last 2 years, just every single day coming out of Washington.
But is it also a measure of the times? We live in a reality TV age. People's attention spans are like gnats, okay? We want sound bites here. And campaigns are marathons, not sprints. And the candidates are almost disincentivized to do anything courageous, let alone, out of the box.
Sure.
So is this going to be the new normal where people can be like, you know what?
It's been the norm for a while. I mean, we in the political class know this. We know that most people's attention spans is relatively short, and we exploit that. We exploit the 24-hour news cycle because in the old days, if something happened at 5 o'clock, you had to wait till 11 or the next day to find out. Now, I have to respond immediately before it gets too viral.
But do you think, Dom, that it's also that these guys don't say anything. And maybe they never did, but it seemed that they used to say more. They used to stake out a position and stand by it, or I mean, maybe it's we're doing the Pollyannish, remembering the Kennedys, whatever, but it just feels that they're so overmanaged and over message driven and staying on the talking point for the day and don't say anything but these 5 things regardless of the question or the evolving events, or just go negative. I understand why there's a fatigue by the electorate out there, because they're not getting any glucose from these guys.
Perhaps that's a valid argument, but please keep in mind that we cover this for a living. So it's important to us. We live, eat, and breathe this stuff in terms of politics. But to the average person, no offense, they have a real life, and they're paying attention to their own issues. And I venture to say, what is the turnout rate for a presidential election? Maybe 60%?
Maybe.
So half the country doesn't vote to begin with. So the bottom line is we all should care, because political decisions decide everything. But the fact of the matter is most people could care less about politics.
You're calling the 4 of us losers. All right.